Welcome, friends. I am Barkey J. Dog, your host for Halloween, where we take a look at spooky cinema appropriate for the spooky season. This time we're talking about mummies. They're running around. Now, these guys have been around for a long time, but when it comes to the movies and we think of the mummy, we generally think of this guy, Boris Karloff, in this amazing mummy makeup. Well, let's take a look at some mummy movies, shall we? First up, how about this one, The Egyptian Mummy, a short film from 1914. Here, this young man has set his cap for this chick. All well and fine, right? But he can't marry her on account of her dad, rightly, points out that he's a loser and has no money. So he naturally forbids the marriage. But her dad is a researcher and he's placed an ad in the paper for a real, authentic Egyptian mummy for his research. He's willing to pay 5,000 smackers for a real mummy. So our lovesick lad hatches a scheme to basically defraud dear old dad. He finds an old, thin, homeless guy and convinces him to play the part of a mummy. He winds him up in wrappings and sells him to the dad. Now that he has the dad's dough, he can abscond with the chick. You can imagine how this one goes when the mummy is revealed to be a fake. This one is okay for what it is. It's short, but it does leave you with some questions, though, as to this kid's moral compass. Well, it's all played for laughs, and true love will probably find a way. Then there was Eyes of the Mummy from 1918. This is a mummy movie that, well, doesn't actually have a mummy in it. This here artist guy is hanging out in Egypt when he sees this vision of loveliness. Hey, it was a different time, what can I say? He follows her, but she gets away. Story of my life, I can tell you. So, he has a case of the sads. But then he hears a rumor about a tomb belonging to Queen Ma, which has driven people crazy, literally. So he decides to check it out, as you do. He gets to the tomb and sees eyes in the wall. Supposedly, I guess. This is the mummy, but it isn't. Spoiler alert, it's the chick of his dreams. Her name is Ma. According to her, this Arabian kidnapped her a few years ago and has forced her to help him scare tourists so he can rob them, I guess. She never tried to escape from him, though. Well, our hero is in love with Ma, so he shoots the bad guy and takes Ma back to Europe with him. But apparently he was so in love that he couldn't see straight and therefore couldn't shoot straight because the bad guy is still alive and is rescued by another European. He becomes that guy's servant so he can follow him to Europe and get revenge. Meanwhile, all of society is taken with Ma, but she's not white, so sexy times with the hero were verboten back then. You can probably figure out the rest. This movie was directed by the great Ernst Lubitsch and stars Paula Negri as Ma. Now, believe it or not, this chick was hot stuff back in your great-great-grandfather's day. This one is pretty dry. The bad guy has dark makeup only applied to his face and not his chest or hands, and there's no mummy. But it's supposed to be about a mummy, which is the only reason I mentioned it. Anyhow, moving on, how about a mummy movie that actually has a mummy in it? This one is Day of the Mummy from 2014. Now, this one starts out okay. You have an Indiana Jones type guy, only he's pretty corrupt. Jack here is an expert in reading hieroglyphs, and he's been disgraced over a theft he was part of. He gets pressured into taking an assignment from this shady former covert government agent rich dude guy. He's independent now, working for himself, I guess. See, he wants Jack to look into a mystery about an Egyptian king with no name. Apparently, he was a lousy king. Anyway, Another researcher has gone missing and no one knows what happened, so Jack is hired to go in with a new team. They're looking for a treasure, a fantastic diamond called the Codex Stone, the MacGuffin of the piece. It has magic powers, I guess. On the team is this arrogant leader dude who doesn't like Jack, and this security chick. She becomes Jack's love interest, of course. Just getting to the lost tomb in question is fraught with danger since there's an uprising and militia types and terrorist guys are shooting everything up. But our team makes it in and starts exploring. Eventually, it all goes sideways, of course, since the mummy is naturally alive and kills people. There's mummy attacks and cave-ins and all of that. William McNamara plays Jack. He's been in lots of stuff. The big brand name here, though, is Danny Glover as Carl, the shady guy bankrolling the expedition. I did like the caves they're in, as those are all real so far as I could tell, and that helps this one out. The mummy looks good, too. It was all shot in Venezuela, not Egypt, but that's mostly okay as they spend a lot of their time in the caves. The trouble with this one is how it was made. It was shot in a mere 10 days, but that's not the big problem, as I expect you've already figured out from these stills. No, the real problem is this artifice of having everything seen from Jack's point of view through these Google glasses Carl gave him, so he can covertly keep tabs on the mission. So it takes on a first-person video game thing. Credit for trying it on, but it gets old fast, and they never cut back to a standard view, so it gets really tedious. Also, no matter where in these caves they go, which is way out in the middle of nowhere, there's always seems to be a good wireless signal, which to me is less believable than a mummy coming back to life. I could buy that, but not the good wireless connectivity. Also, minor spoiler, but the leader guy, he wears a similar looking pair of glasses to what Carl gave Jack, but they're just plain glasses. A missed opportunity because the leader guy could also secretly be working for Carl, who's playing one end against the other. But they don't go there. Day of the Mummy has some good points though, but I think unless you're a hardcore gamer, you'll get tired of the first-person view gimmick. I know I did. Then we have The Pyramid, also from 2014. A research team in Egypt have discovered a mysterious underground tomb with a 3-sided pyramid. So pretty strange. On this team is this leader and his daughter, and there's also a tech dude love interest for her. There's also a Discovery Channel type lady and her cameraman. Now again, there's an uprising, and it's dangerous for European folk to be in Egypt, so the military orders them out. But they have a deadline, so they decide, since they have a little bit of time, why not take a look in the tomb while they can? Things start badly when a worker opens the tomb and gets a case of instant Ebola or something. That should tell them not to try, but they go in anyway. And promptly get all turned around and lost. And there's something in the structure with them, these rat-like creatures who attack them from time to time. And yup, you guessed it, a mysterious mummy-like bad guy lurking around in the shadows. It's not really giving anything away to tell you that most of the team here is mummy chow. Dennis O'Hare plays the dad, just about the only name brand. He was in a bunch of stuff. Ironically, he got his start in an episode of Young Indiana Jones. This movie failed so spectacularly at the box office that the studio didn't even bother releasing it on DVD in most parts of the world. I like the corridors and stuff here, but the creature effects are not too splendorific. It's better than Day of the Mummy, though. It's kinda sad, but because the mummy, like scarecrows and witches and whatnot, has such a low bar to entry for low-budget filmmakers, there's a lot of crappy mummy movies out there. Like this one, Rise of the Mummy from 2021. Here, there's a mummy that comes back to life. The movie opens with some college kid getting chased by this mummy, and they just get him put back to sleep when the British military show up and kill them all. Okay, I guess. Then we go to a college campus where a class of students are given the chance to study this mummy. Uh-huh. Of course, it comes to life, kills people, and turns others into his minions. They have to figure out how to stop this guy. They can't just leave the building either because, oh no, it's now stuck in some kind of bubble universe. So if you go out the door, you come right back in again. Weird. Not much here makes sense. Like, why is this priceless mummy that the government wanted so bad they sent the military after it is being given to this bunch of college students to examine instead of actual proper experts at a museum or a scientific laboratory? That's not how it works. And the mummy here, wow, this costume is seriously the worst. It looks more like a ghillie suit. Ugh, cheap as hell. Honestly, why even bother? And while the idea of the building being caught in some kind of time loop or pocket universe thing is interesting, what does that have to do with mummies? And this school seems sorta empty. Not many students or staff on campus. Is it summer break or what? Kate Sanderson is in this. She's probably the biggest no-name brand. She's appeared in a lot of these low-budget horror movies. Antonia Johnston is also in this, done some of these low-budget horror things. She directs this one too. It's her only directing credit. You can see why, although I have seen worse. I'll give them this. The possessed people are kinda played interestingly. They're all feral and twitchy. But other than that, man, this one feels pretty cheap. You could totally skip this for sure. Then, speaking of both worse and skippable, there's this thing. The Mummy's Desire from 2013. A movie so bad, you won't even find it on IMDb. At least I couldn't find it listed there. Here, a researcher is in Mexico in the 1940s looking for an Egyptian mummy. That's right. He has a crackpot theory that the Egyptians were hanging out with the Aztecs way back in ancient times. Ugh! I don't even want to talk about this one. It's that awful. This was made by a guy named Brother Andy, a hack independent filmmaker who cranks out low-budget Z-grade crap like this and inflicts it on everyone. I mean, I'd rather watch Star Trek Discovery than another one of his pictures. Well, wait a minute. The movie isn't that bad. But this guy could give Alex Kurtzman a run for his money. Both are hacks. Kurtzman just has a bigger budget to work with. You can find this on YouTube, but the thing is so tediously bad you can't even riff on it. Like you can't misty it or anything. Okay, I have to give this guy some credit. He went out and made a movie. That's more than I've ever done, fair point. But I like to think that if I ever got to make a movie, it would be at least somewhat competent. Not so with this thing. Well, enough of that. How about some fun mummy movies? Well, there's this one from South America. The Secret of the Mummy from 1982. Here, a professor has created an elixir of life, and after killing off his relatives so he can gather pieces of a map, he discovers the tomb of an ancient Egyptian mummy. He wants the tomb's treasure to bankroll his operations, I guess. He brings the mummy back to Brazil and gives it his elixir to reanimate it. But it turns out this mummy was a nutcase in his former life. He was hot for a sexy chick dancer and was denied sexy times. And so he killed people. So now he picks up where he left off and kills some people while seeking out his sexy chick. There's a goofy Igor type who works for the professor, and this maid, she shows it all off in one scene. Yeah, there is some naked nudity in this movie. It's not an outright farce, but it is a comedic mummy movie. Sorta good, sort of odd, funny, but sorta dumb. Anyway, it's not too terrible. And then we have a strange one. How many remember this? The all-new adventures of Laurel and Hardy for Love or Mummy from 1999. This is a sort of pastiche of Laurel and Hardy, and fans of the legendary comic duo had mixed feelings. Some hated it, while others appreciated it for what it was. I actually fall into that second camp. In this one, set in then modern times of the 1990s, the duo wind up helping out with the display of a mummy via their lodge. Ollie falls in love with one of the archaeologists, but he has some stiff competition from a suave bad guy who wants to reanimate the mummy and use it for evil purposes, which he does. There's a lot of slapstick, and I gotta say, I thought the actors did a fine impersonation of Stan and Ollie. Gaylord Sartain really was a standout as Ollie. He was in Fried Green Tomatoes, Mississippi Burning, and The Outsiders. He passed away just this past June. And Brosnan Pinchot, he does an admirable Stan Laurel. Neither are perfect, of course, but this is pretty close to the best you could do without the original duo. F. Murray Abraham and Bozo the Clown himself, that's right. Larry Harmon cameos in this, and he helped to write the script. This movie was meant to be the opening salvo in a new franchise, but the movie failed, and the all-new adventures of Laurel and Hardy pretty much ended with this one picture. Kind of a shame, really. Maybe other entries would have been better. I enjoyed it, though. It was offbeat and fun, and they did show respect to Laurel and Hardy. And, of course, speaking of comedy duos, we have Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy from 1955. The boys get stranded in Egypt and decide to try and get a job transporting a mummy back to the United States, but the professor in charge gets bumped off. The boys get the blame, but there are two factions who want this mummy. One is a cult of mummy worshippers, and the other is Marie Windsor and her gang who want the mummy's treasure. A lot of comedy follows. It's your typical Abbott and Costello laugh fest and a fun watch. Besides Marie Windsor, Richard Deacon from The Dick Van Dyke Show, he's here as the cult leader. Michael Ansara, Kang from Star Trek, he's also here. He's one of Windsor's henchmen. Sadly, when Abbott and Costello started doing their send-ups of the classic Universal monsters, that was the sign that the great horror cycle was over. Sure, there were other horror movies that came along in the 1950s, but they were never the large-scale, serious A-list pictures like Dracula and Frankenstein, The Wolfman, and The Mummy. And all of the interesting and unusual horror pictures, the kind that starred Karloff and Lugosi. That era was over. You stay tuned, because I'll have more as Halloween continues.